Hello, assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound and healthy. And today we're going to talk about very sort of a sensitive issue, but also an issue that should be sensitive, despite the fact, or in fact, because of the fact that it is so sensitive, people seem to use and abuse this issue and humiliate each other, and even nations and races on this point. So I think although I have actually talked about this in one of my oldest podcasts, one of the earlier episodes of this, podcast channel. But the point is that I think it needs to be talked about again, especially since in their hatred for Indians, the white people are going all out, and we need to call them out because listen, many facts are true, but there are certain facts that we need to address. For example, there's this new trend where people are now talking about how their Indian neighbors or bosses or whatever, they smell like onions. They smell like. So, you know what an onion smells like? Really? Finally? Okay, good for you. Do you even know what it smells like? But anyway, point being, remember in one of my earliest podcasts, I talked about how one of the worst the worst experiences that my mother had was entering into the subway with me in the UK, in the underground metro, and gagging. Because, according to her, the white man doesn't bathe. Okay? She's like, these people, I swear, they need to hit the shower. They don't know how to they don't know how to get clean, Because why? Because she was hit with this whole BO, this stench from people who were basically tired out from their work, and they were they were now just exhausted and they wanted to go home. And, there was this strong body odor, according to her, from almost everybody, that the whole carriage was like, that whole bus or carriage or whatever you like to call it reeked. And now here's the difference, okay? I would never make faces or gag or anything. I think that one of the ways, you've got an evolved mind is what makes people react to or overreact to, or what makes people use to as bad forms of humor, in my opinion. To me, it's not humor. To me, it's not something that I need to talk about. And to me, it's something that falls under the consideration equation. People, as I said, are basically not civilized. And there's a reason I always say that. It's because people have no consideration for others. They all want to have that consideration given to them, but nobody has the consideration to give to others, okay? And it is these small things. For example, I would never call somebody out or even pretend to know, or I would not. I would literally I would act as if I'm blind, I'm deaf, I'm mute, I'm not even there. If somebody, for example, farts in front of me, or if somebody has irritable bowel syndrome, which by the way is more common than you think, in front of me, or if somebody is going through something that can be seemed as humiliating to that person or embarrassing to that person, I will never, ever, ever make that person feel that I am there and I'm present. But unfortunately, because as I said, people are inherently uncivilized in this sense, their minds are still not evolved to that point. So because they know that if they are in your place, they will judge, they will laugh, they will talk, they will humiliate. If anything, they will go behind your back and talk. So they're always scared that you are just like them, because let's face it, people are just like each other. Just because I'm one of those extremely rare few people who are not like the rest of you at this point, it doesn't mean that you would know, obviously, because as I said, generally people are like that. Generally people are quick to embarrass others and quick to talk behind their backs. So how are you to know that I am not the type? So I've noticed that one of the things that people do Also, even if they do realize that you are different and that you are not the type and that you're just ignoring it and acting as if you don't even know what happened, but their humiliation levels go so high that in fact somehow the other it has a negative impact as well. And so their reaction to you ignoring the whole thing, or to you giving them that space so that they don't feel humiliated, is that they feel extra humiliated for some weird reason. And then they'll make it a point to blame you for what they've done, or to talk behind your back about you, and to keep on spreading rumors about you in various ways. So if you catch somebody in an act and you completely ignore that person and act as if you don't know what happened, or you don't, or you just act as if you just don't know anything, it tends to rub people the wrong way as well, where they feel, oh, we need to, you know, uh, give validity to our humiliation right now by going and spreading rumors about this person who witnessed me being humiliated. So basically, you being a nice, kind, generous person can have the adverse effect of making them feel small, and then they will go to any lengths to degrade you, or to ruin your reputation, or to slander you. And actually, you can, if you cannot relate to it, then look at it at the bigger picture. Look at Imran Khan and look at what is being done to him by the people who are so inferior to him. And why do they keep on and on and on going after him? Because the more they go after him, the more they feel small. The smaller they feel, the more inferior they feel, the more angry they get, and then the more they go after him. And every single time he ends up making them feel smaller. So the aggression levels get higher, you understand? And that is basically what happens when you deal with small people. And as I said, generally people are small. Let's face it, generally people are very small when it comes to these things. But again, at the same time, I will tell you that I have at the same time met very professional, mature people too. I have worked for almost 2 decades in Pakistan, and Pakistan today is not what it was before, professionally speaking, in the sense that we had a very amazing, very professional environment in Pakistan for the longest time ever. And finally, Pakistan is catching up with the Korean dramas and the Japanese dramas, it seems, and the Western atmosphere. And things have changed for the worse. Also, the multinational, international companies that have come with, and then they have these wannabes and they have these weird asses, who are trying to implement whatever it is that they faced. Remember, I also did a podcast on that. People who have come back from abroad, now whatever shit they faced over there, whatever unprofessional shit and racism and discrimination and humiliation they faced there, they are now enacting all of that upon people who work under them, their employees or their colleagues, or their or people who are directly under their charge, in offices or in universities or whatever, right? So that's why Pakistan has finally taken care of that too, where it has taken all the bad things from abroad and once again implemented it here in our otherwise very professional atmosphere. So I'll give this example. When I worked here in Pakistan, I've met many immature and unprofessional people here too. It's not that, but the whole atmosphere was such that the majority would not allow those kind of people to make a mess out of our professional atmosphere. Basically, we treated each other with dignity and we treated each other with professionalism, and we kept the atmosphere very nice, very calm, very friendly. In almost all the places I've worked. And when I was in England and working, because again, you see, here in Pakistan, I was working with people of my level. You understand? Now, I'm sorry, but it does come into play, and it is very important, and we need to accept that. Here I worked with people who were of my level. You understand? Over there, I worked with people who were from various different backgrounds. Here too, I worked with people from various different backgrounds. When I'm saying level, I'm talking about level as in not just educational level, because our educational levels also varied. We're talking about mental level, professional level. Okay, we shared the same mental and professional level. Whereas in England, I worked with many people who came from various different backgrounds, and they had various problems of their own, various issues of their own, various, inferiority complexes of their own. And there were people who clung to jobs that I really didn't care for, because to me, I was just passing my time. I was doing a good job and then I was leaving, and that's it. I wasn't, digging for a promotion. I wasn't that I wasn't thinking about any having any future. That was just a part-time job that I was doing. But to others, it was their life, their future, whatever. And so, for various reasons, they would come up with, and these were all, again, most of them were Indians. Sorry to say, but yes, they were British Indians. Although, mind you, half of the British Indians were very nice. There were some Pakistanis who were very nice. There were Bangladeshis. Now, again, majority of the Bangladeshis were very nice, but there was this one Bangladeshi who, the worst part, or the stupidest or most hilarious part about her was, she thought that I didn't know what she was doing. So while she clung to me and acted as if she was a good friend of mine and this and that, and then she would complain that she didn't have any female friends. Well, there's a reason. I think I talked about this too in one of my earliest podcasts, but there is a reason you don't have female friends, because I'm sorry to say, you are literally looking for ways to drag all the females down, you know. So she had some sort of a complex issues. I'm not going to go deep into that, but you could see her complex coming up, because actually the colleague that I replaced was a senior colleague. Now, I replaced that colleague, but I came in part time. That colleague worked full time, and she was a senior. And even as she left, she pointed out the fact that this particular girl, and that colleague was Indian, by the way, as well. So she pointed out that this girl was the one who created a lot of problems for her, and that she thought she didn't know, but she knew that she was behind a lot of the politics and the bullying and other kind of, and slandering, on talking behind her back, stuff, spreading rumors about her. Like, she made basically her work life hell. And she had a lot of bitterness towards this Bangladeshi girl. And you know what? I believed it immediately, because the minute I started working there, I already saw it. That's another thing people don't get to know about me is, as I said, because I don't talk, I don't judge, I don't do anything, I don't say anything. So people probably have no idea until it's very late that I literally know who I'm dealing with, and I am always 10 steps ahead. For a reason, is because I literally can see through people in a matter of seconds. You just have to look at me and say hi, and I already know what it is that you're going to do to me in the next 10 minutes. It's a fact, okay? That's why I've always been very good at my job, and that's why I'm a very good teacher. Thank you very much. That's why I'm a very good writer too, even if I do say so myself. Yeah, but the point is that I'm somebody who has played mind games for as long as since I was a kid. I'm somebody who has played very, very long-term mind games with myself and with others, and without even others knowing about it. So this has always been something I've sort of automatically, instinctively practiced all my life, reading through people, seeing what they're going to do next, and always seeing how right I am and how wrong I am and how many mistakes I made in calculating their steps. So that's how I've actually saved myself from a lot of problems in my entire life. And that's how I've saved myself from getting harmed by people, most of the people in my entire life. It's because I always know what people are going to do, and they always rise to the to the expectations, to be honest. It's very easy to predict people. It's not that I'm some alien or something. The truth is, it's actually very easy to understand people and to predict people, if only you gave yourself the time of the day, to sit down and understand your own brain. When you understand your own brain, you understand the whole humanity. It's very easy. And when you actually observe people, how they walk, how they talk, when you understand humanity, when you understand human level, when you understand mentalities, when you understand cultures, you understand societies, it's very, very easy to predict how countries will move and how politics will go and how wars are going to come. And, it's very, very easy to predict the human mind, is what I'm saying. It's very easy, much more easier than you think. And the real challenge, the challenge that is fun for me is seeing in what way each individual is different from the other, which I'm very sorry to say. This is where many have, I guess I would say, disappointed me, although they didn't disappoint me because it's something I expected. But still, that yeah, sometimes I tend to, give more credit to people thinking that, oh, they will have this slight individual difference from the other. But no, at the end of the day, they're all the same. And this is why I'm trying to tell you that is why people will not understand you if you are different, because they are all the same and they know they're all the same. You see? So, for example, if as I said, the more civilized you will act in front of somebody, the smaller you'll make them feel in many cases, and the more negative or adverse the effect, that will sort of be. It will sort of back, yeah, it will sort of backflash at you, you know, or it will backfire at you, right? So, yeah, there's that. And one has to be ready for that. So, people like me who are always, always careful, always, always considerate about other people's dignity, we end up at the hands of those very people, slandering our dignity, creating false rumors about us, because they feel so small and humiliated, is basically it, So, when people talk about, for example, body odor and this and that, I have actually literally seen how people have slandered other people by lying about it. Because you're literally standing in front of somebody who actually does have enough BO to make you gag, but nobody's going to talk about it. But they will talk about somebody else who has no BO whatsoever and slander them. And why? Because they feel small, because they feel inferior, because they feel jealous. It's weird, absolutely weird. They will try to create weird ass true. For example, I remember that there was a time when I didn't even have, you know I didn't even have my period. Okay. Let's just make it out clear, because I have more female, although I've recently found out I've got male subscribers too. But you know what, this is also another taboo that we created ourselves, that don't talk to me about your period. Oh my god. You know what, it's part of life, deal with it. Even and that is the one thing that also pisses me off, is because the prophet, peace be upon him, he talked about it. He and his wife, they talked about it. How else do you know what you need, what you're supposed to do in those days and what you're not supposed to do in those days? How are you supposed to know? It's like sex education. If you don't get it, how the hell are you supposed to know what you need to do and not to do? So there are certain topics that we deliberately make taboo out of because we just don't want to know anything, or because we don't, I mean, it's again our pagan culture. It's weird how the pagans have had more taboos than the monotheistic religions. It's weird. Okay, well, anyway, so yeah, I'm just proving a point here, so I have to talk about it. That there was a day when literally I didn't even have my period, and then there was the girls' bathroom where somebody who had their period didn't flush. And the girls, and because I had the misfortune, and because already, once again, because I had the misfortune of witnessing the fact and just shutting my mouth about it and not talking about it, one of them thought that I might go and talk about it. And they immediately first argued with each other, and then they decided, because I just left the scene, and so they decided to slander me. And you know what I did? I just kept quiet. I'm like, yeah, whatever, who cares? And that girl did that time and again, time and again. You know, she would make up all kinds of rumors about me, Sometimes you would say, oh, she spread this rumor that I have body odor, and or she spread this rumor that about the period thing, or so, and the thing is that she would spread it amongst everybody, as in male and female staff, you know and she was the one with the problems most of the time. But they decided, as it always happens, that there's one person who then they decided, okay, let's just, as I said, they did the same thing to the girl I replaced, the girl before me, who actually worked there for years before this particular Bangladeshi girl showed up. And that Indian girl had a very good reputation, and she was lauded for her good work, and she was promoted many times, again, until this Bangladeshi showed up. And this Bangladeshi girl did all these kind of things to her and made her life hell, basically, you know and she obviously, as I said, the thing that makes people so idiotic and moronic is that they're so stupid that they actually think that they're fooling others, but they're not. Your victim knows that it's you, and then she would just cling to us and say, "Hey, you're my only friend, you're my this, you're my that." And I mean, as I said, I'm the kind of person, I just endure and I endure and I endure until I decide not to. That's another thing people do not seem to understand, because people are so used to the fact that I don't get angry, they think they can say and do anything. And one of them even said that to me. I remember one of my very old former colleagues, she said that, why it's so much nicer and fun talking to you or being with you is because one can say anything in front of you, and you don't care, you don't mind, and you don't take offense, and I was like, I just thought that, I'm like, what, because of this particular reason, I would think that people would learn to have boundaries. The fact that I do not mind, or that I do not take offense, that I do not get angry, that I try to understand where you're coming from, if anything, should give you pause in life, right? If anything, it should make you think about what the heck it is that you're doing. Especially, as I said, you don't even know. You're so busy thinking about how I am being so considerate towards you that you have no idea how inconsiderate you've been towards me, So, and also, you see, I have had the misfortune to always seem to attract such kind of people for the most of my life, where people have somehow, despite the fact that, as I said, I'm the kind of person who likes to keep a low profile, which means I literally prefer being invisible. That's how I spent my whole life. Even within my family, I've always tried to be invisible, right? I and if you just look at me, as I said, I don't even wear makeup. I don't I mean, I don't do anything that girls would do, basically, to make themselves attractive or to make themselves stand out, or I just am normal, and I prefer to stay normal, and I prefer to stay in the background, is what I prefer. Okay. And it's weird how many girls end up feeling jealous of this particular aspect. In other words, your internal self confidence also can give rise to jealousy. It's amazing. It's actually amazing, the amount of jealousy that other people can feel towards somebody who's literally spending their whole lives trying to be invisible, you know. So you would think that people would like to forget about you, but no, the more invisible you try to be, the more apparently you stand out for some weird ass reason. And so, one of the things that I decided to do, as I said, I don't get angry unless I want to. I don't feel offended unless I want to. So, it's all within my power. I'm not like other people. I don't get emotional. I only get emotional if I want to. So, that's when we talk about, that's why I say that, there are some of us who have evolved brains. Okay. That means we know how to take care of our shit. We know how to control ourselves, and we know how not to have impulses. Okay. So, yeah, so then one day I decided that, okay, since everybody seems to think that because I don't say anything, because I don't do anything, it means they can say and do anything themselves, let me give them a dose of their own medicine. And when I decide that now is the time when I should have enough, that's when I blast everybody in my sight. And then I tell them the things, you know, as I said, I know people, I know how to push their buttons. And then I deliberately push their buttons in the ways that I can wind them up and watch them go. I have made grown ass men cry, you know. And again, the worst part about such people is that in their narcissism and in their selfishness and in self-centeredness and in consideration for others, where, you know, they literally cry blue murder as if they're the victims. You have been victimizing somebody for years, decades even, and when finally that person says, shut the fuck up, and the person gives you a resounding smack, then you suddenly become the victim. That is so hilarious, and that is so pathetic, and that is so you. In other words, I mean, you know, that is so what I say when I say the human beings are essentially very small and uncivilized. The fact that they become the victims when victims finally give them a good healthy dose of their own medicine, you know. So I do that very strategically every now and then. And I think in Islam, by the way, you have the right to do that, in case you didn't know that. In Islam, it is that if somebody has smacked you, you have the right to give that person the exact same kind of smack with the exact same kind of intensity and in the exact same way and in front of the same people. You can reenact the whole scene to your justification. But if you want to forget them and forgive and forget, then I'm with you. That's what God says. Okay? That's even better. Why is it even better, by the way? It's not even better that you're forgetting and forgiving, you know, oh, you're so, no, because then God says, basically what God is saying, that it's even better because now I'll take over. And when I'll take over, I won't even let them go. So that's it, basically. That's basically what God is saying, is that if you let them go, then I come in. So, but yeah, I prefer to get my own justice, because who's going to wait for death and then after death and then get up? And what is that compensation going to be, you know? This life will have been gone, right? So why not just take care of it right here and now where it actually matters? So especially in such small things, see, these trivial things, better to take care of them on your own, you know. That's where I believe, especially when, as I said, when people do not know their boundaries themselves, you have to tell them what their boundaries are. And so every now and then, especially again if you've faced all this shit for years, if you decide that, you know, it's about time to give somebody a shut up call, it's well deserved. So yeah, another thing that I do is that people who I especially have begun to loathe, because they just wouldn't leave me the hell alone, is that when they call me after years because now they suddenly need me or something, is I simply now just say no, you know, but I still try to help them, but I'm not the one who's going to help them directly. If I find somebody who can help them, well and good, but I'm not wasting my time on them anymore. That's one. Number two, I would reward them by literally blasting at them. Blasting at them by telling me in what a bad condition I am and how worse how much worse my life has become, and I'm in shambles and in ruins and nothing is going right for me. That gives them the satisfaction, you see. That gives them that satisfaction that they needed, you know, because they want to know that I'm in a bad place. So I let it rip. I give them that satisfaction, and then I sit back and watch them go. That is another good way to make fools out of your enemies. In other words, you know, that's a very, very good way to keep them off of your back too. Let them live in a fool's paradise, in la la land, you know. Let them go about while you quietly do your stuff with no interference, no interruption whatsoever. So that's another thing that I do. As I said, I treat people accordingly. And nothing that I do is pure animal instinct or emotions. Everything is well thought out. It is objectively and subjectively thought out. Emotions do take a play, yes, but if you want them to. Okay? So, all I'll say is if somebody is showing you consideration to help you keep your dignity in front of them, you feeling small about their kindness towards you means you have a problem. Because there are people, I know such people who, just like me, show that kindness. Yes, I actually know because, feathers of a kind. Yeah. I have friends. I have very, very good friends who have this exact same nature as I do, where they will show you that kindness of not making you feel humiliated if you get caught in a humiliating position or an embarrassing position. And they, in their own way, will try to keep your self respect or dignity intact. Now, the way you react to them by becoming small, petty, mean minded, and you decide that you need to now humiliate them and in front of others because you don't have the guts to do it to them to their face. So now you will go and do it behind their backs and make up stories about them and falsify, facts about them and slander them and all. It is telling the world nothing about them as much as it's telling the world about you. You're showing the world what you are by doing such things. People like us, we'll just ignore and go because we know that this world doesn't matter. We know that anything and everything that is happening, it doesn't really matter because we're going to be dead tomorrow. And, then the real life and the real world begins where we have to stand in front of God and give answers. And that's where, my friend, you are fucked. And over there, you don't even have another chance because you're not going to die again. No, that is where we're back to our immortal lives. You know what that means? That means immortality in hell for you. Because just because we have kept quiet or ignored you, that does not mean nothing's going to happen to you because you're still going to be punished. Silence or tolerance or endurance does not mean forgiveness. It just means see you in hell. Seriously. So, now why am I saying? It's like now you're talking about Indians. Oh, they're you know what? White people aren't known for their cleanliness either. The stench that you get when you go to New York City or in Canada or in Europe now, especially with the drug addicts and, and there's a lot of homelessness there and everything. Let me tell you one thing. It is worse than even in India, okay? Number one. It is true India is dirty. It is true. But remember, India is huge. And India is struggling in many ways. You guys have nothing to your own name. Everything you have is borrowed. And one of the countries that you stole and borrowed from is India, or the subcontinent to be exact, which is India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. You stole from us. And then, you stole from Iraq, and then you stole from Egypt, and then you stole from Syria, and then you stole from, Lebanon and Libya, and then you're stealing from Palestine. I mean, is there any place you haven't stolen from? What is it that you have to your own name? It's something I keep on and on asking Europeans, the Caucasians, like, what is your history? What is your culture? What is your present? What is it that you have to your name? Nothing. Sorry to say, but nothing. So when you talk about other countries like that, as I said, I know India is problematic. And I know that in a way, it's a good thing that you're finally breaking that, because India has acted very badly towards the whole world, especially towards Pakistan. And we all know that. And in fact, one of the biggest reasons that Pakistan enjoyed a notorious reputation was because of India and America. who deliberately did negative PR against Pakistan. We know that. And now people are beginning to realize that. Thank you very much for realizing it. And thank you very much for, giving that much needed perspective. And thank you very much for opening people's eyes as to what India really is or what it's really about, and that it's not Hollywood and it's not Bollywood and it's not this and it's not that and it's not what it's portrayed to be. Thank you very much for very openly doing that. But there are certain things, as I said, in which I just cannot agree with you or catch up. I cannot be, not everything that you're saying or doing is correct or right, as I said. So this stereotyping of Indians, that they smell like onions or they smell like curry, sorry, because as I said, if you ever bothered to smell the stench that comes from yourselves, due to lack of hygiene or due to lack of proper hygiene, um, I don't even want to go there, but I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not just talking about the bathroom related hygiene, I'm talking about general hygiene, and I'm talking about, And again, the reason why people like me would never even talk about this normally is because, as I said, listen, there are many things that happen. For example, I'm somebody who doesn't sweat. Yeah, okay, in case you people never knew that, but actually I was somebody and I am somebody, I'm talking about Pakistan, in a place like Pakistan where there's well, now thanks to climate change, the weather is so fucked up that even I'm sweating. But the point is that there was a time, when the weather was great and the climate change, it wasn't to this point that it is now. And the people literally used to wonder, how is it that I'm just standing there and not sweating in the heat, okay, while people were sweating buckets. But you know what? The same thing is now. Now my mother too also is literally facing this now, that she's like, I've never sweated like this in my entire life the way I'm sweating now. So this is climate change. As I said, things happen in life. Never had smelly feet in my entire life, But you know what? That didn't make it justifiable for me to sit in front of people who did have smelly feet and say, ew, what is wrong with your feet? No, I would never do that, because I know how that can destroy somebody's self-esteem, hurt that person. Because if I know that something like this could hurt me, if somebody says to me can hurt me, why the fuck am I going to go and do that to somebody else? Unless, again, because like regular human beings, I would like to take the mickey out of somebody else just to drown that low self-esteem from within myself, right? Which is literally what inferior people do. You are an inferior person when you direct something at somebody else and make fun of somebody just to drown your own low self-esteem or your own inferiority complex or your own whatever the shit it is that you're going through at that point. That you are a malicious person and that you're an inferior person, and you need to fix that. Okay, you need to fix that. If you want people to show you consideration, you need to start showing people consideration. Okay, and that's how people will slowly change. The fact that everybody's like that is because, as I said, is because people are always looking for ways to humiliate others. I really do not see the fun in that. I don't. Sometimes you too can have a bad day. You can be extremely hygienic. You can have your bath 3 times a day, which is what most of us Asians do, by the way, because the heat here is unbearable. We literally hit the shower at least twice a day. Okay? And in Europe and all, because of your climate and everything, you don't even realize that you're accumulating all that dirt or you're accumulating all that, body odor, really. You don't realize that the person next to you who's gagging is the one who realizes it. And that's fine because your weather is such and your clothes are such. This is what I'm trying to say. As I said, there are many varying factors that can put you in that uncomfortable spot that you've never been in your entire life before. It could be a cheap-ass polyester fabric, which is what most employees are forced to wear as uniforms in Europe. You have these weird-ass synthetic clothes that are given to you that literally cause body odor, by the way, in case you didn't know that. It doesn't matter how clean you are, but the fabric itself is what causes body odor. And I've done a podcast on that too. Similarly, the kind of material that they use in shoes, if that material is not good, it can cause foot odor. Yes, you can end up with smelly feet just because of the material of your shoes. So these factors come into play. It has nothing to do with your personal hygiene per se, as it is to do with the materials that are being used, in your daily life. They add to these things. They add to these factors. Okay. Yes, what you eat and drink is also that, but that is beside the point, you know. So making fun of people saying, "Oh, they smell like this and they smell like that," 9 times out of 10, I've noticed is it's false, absolutely false. Okay, you're like literally coming to me and saying, "Oh, this person reeks of so and so." I don't smell jack shit from that person. I'm not smelling anything. Okay, I can't smell anything from that person. What do you want me to say? In fact, now what I find surprising is that we're five of us standing in front of somebody who literally does have very, very, very bad BO for some reason that day. So bad that even a person like me gets reflex gag. Can you imagine? And I am so embarrassed that I am embarrassed. The person who's having BO is not the one who's being embarrassed. Everybody is quietly standing and talking to them because he's a superior person or a manager, for example. And nobody is now commenting on the BO, nobody's gagging, nothing. And yet I get a reflex gag because it's so bad. And then I have to stop myself because I am so embarrassed of myself that how can I do such a thing that can hurt somebody else? But thankfully nobody notices. Now that's the weird ass part too, that nobody notices. You see what I'm trying to say here? The way you pick and choose who it is that you need to slander, considering body odor or considering hygiene or considering whatever it is, yeah, you need to stop, because these are 9 out of 10 times these are pure ass lies. But then, everybody wants to go with it because it's fun. Now, that's another thing. As I said, that's why I say people are very uncivilized. They think it's fun to humiliate others. And that is why you're so small, and that is why you lack self-esteem, and that is why you don't have dignity. And that is why you're always out to encroach upon other people's dignities, is because you don't have that dignity. If you want to be respected, you need to learn to respect others. Okay? This is respect, where you show somebody some respect by not humiliating them, not calling them out, not embarrassing them. Do you know the amount of times I have flushed toilets in the staff bathroom in Pakistan as well as out, where people have, it happens, okay? It's normal. It has happened to you. It can happen to anybody else. In your own homes, how many times have you suddenly just zonked out when you're in the toilet and you think you've flushed the toilet, you wash your hands, you come out, and then you completely forget the fact because it is part of your routine. When we go on autopilot mode, we do these things without thinking. Even in zombie mode, we do these things without thinking. You use the toilet, you drop the seat down, the added seat, the seat is already down, but then you cover the toilet up, you flush it, you wash your hands, you move out, without even thinking. So obviously, if one day you miss that step of flushing your toilet and you realize it, you don't even realize it, until you go back to the toilet and you're like, what the fuck, how did this happen? I could swear I flushed the toilet. It happens to you at home, right? Now, why is it that if some person has had the misfortune to have had it happen to them in a staff bathroom, why do you have to make a fuss out of it and call everybody and tell everybody that, oh, somebody forgot to flush the toilet, it was awful, it's bad, it's terrible, it's despicable, it's disgusting? Are you serious? Why are you trying to dehumanize another person? You saw it, flush the damn toilet and get out. I have done that a million times and never allowed anybody to know, because it happens. But now here's the difference again. In Pakistan, nobody, decided to humiliate me by suddenly realizing that, oh, they left the toilet and this and that and all. No. But in my case, if I'm in England, for example, in a place like England, where I become an unfortunate witness of somebody again doing that, but I completely again ignore the whole thing and try to get out as if I don't know what's going on. And they get caught in this humiliating turn, and then they decide to slander me by saying, oh, I didn't flush the toilet and that I was the one who made the mess. Like, seriously, get a grip. Get a grip. I flushed the toilet for you. Get a grip. Shut up. Don't now just try to make yourself feel better by calling everybody and saying, oh, somebody left the toilet. This is so despicable. It's so disgusting. When I've literally caught you in the act like twice and said nothing. Because it happens. If I'm not saying anything, why the fuck are you going around announcing to the whole world that this thing happened? That's this is one of those things where I can say that the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he says that there are certain things that when you see, you should just keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about it. Don't spread it. Because you're as I said, in Islam, there is a reason why Hukuk al-Ibad comes first and Hukuk Allah comes second. That means consideration for human beings comes first and consideration for Allah comes second. Okay, the rights of human beings come first, the rights of God come second. That is, Hukuk means rights. So the rights of other human beings towards you and your duties towards other human beings comes first, and the rights of God towards you and your duties towards God comes second. Because God says he can forgive many things that's between you and him. But what you're doing to another person cannot be forgiven. If you hurt another person, if you humiliate another person, if you're inconsiderate towards another person, if you're trying to dehumanize another person, you cannot be forgiven, no matter how small it is. No matter how small it is. As I said, in Islam, even parents who humiliate their kids in front of others will not be forgiven. Remember the hadith where the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he went to visit a sick child, and it was a Jewish family, and the child was a very young child, a minor. He was very sick, but he apparently had become better. So the Prophet went to meet him, to see him, and he sat the child on his lap, and the child suddenly urinated, if I remember well. Yeah, he urinated. And his father was so chagrined, he was so embarrassed that he got up to berate his child. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, immediately stopped him. And he said, look, if you break his dignity and confidence right now in public, where do you think he will ever bring it back in his life? Understand these words. Where do you think he will ever bring back that dignity and confidence in his life? Because once you break the confidence of another person, or once you make another person feel humiliated, once you stamp on that person's dignity and self-respect, it cannot be brought back. Because even if he tries to maintain or retain his dignity at one point, this memory will haunt him and he will go back into that shell. And so it's unforgivable. Coming back to this, now again, the reason I'm also talking about this is it meets that point where I said the stench that you have in Europe and in America, in Canada, which this particular stench you can relate to in other parts of the world too. And this is the stench of homelessness, of not allowing another human being to live in dignity. For example, now in Japan, there's this weird problem where they say, oh, there's so many homes in Japan that are completely empty because of the lack of inheritance, because there's so many people who don't have anybody who can inherit their homes and this and that. Has the government ever thought about repurposing those empty homes and giving it to those who have lost everything? Because we do know that even in Japan, there are so many people who ended up homeless because of the amount of debts that they staggered under. And not only did the government fail them there when it came to those debts that they're staggering under. In fact, if anything, it's the system that put them into debt in the first place. That's the problem again with secular countries, is like, and the Western countries especially, is the amount of debt that you deliberately entangle your people in, so that they end up failing so much. You're literally gambling. You're the house. You, the government, the system, you're the house, and your people are forced to gamble, and the house always wins. That's literally what's going on. So you are dehumanizing your people. You are belittling them, you are stamping on their dignity. And the whole point of Islam, or the whole point of God, when he makes these laws, is the whole point of his laws and the system that he wants in place is that human beings must be able to live in dignity. And that is what, Imran Khan was, one of the things he was working on when he worked on shelters and, with free food and this and that for day laborers and for homeless laborers, as in people who have come from different villages here to look for a job, but they don't have a place to stay yet. And what was the first thing that Maryam Nawaz did when she came? She closed them down. Shahbaz Sharif, he closed them down. The hospitals that Buzdar was working on, extending their rooms, extending their creating more beds, more space, schools that he was working on, they came and they started, now they've closed down the schools and they started fucking around with the hospitals. Now, you understand, Imran Khan he knew the importance of this Islamic teaching and or generally of this human aspect of humanity, that every man has the right to live in dignity. So again, I would ask the Japanese government, did you ever think about repurposing all those empty houses? Just give it to those people who have no place to live. In the West, where you have this homelessness, again, it's because of saturation, because of, again, people moving from one city to another or one small town to a bigger city, and the same problems that our countries are facing, where people are coming from villages to towns to seek jobs, to get better lives. They have no place to go. What have you done? That stench is the stench of you stamping on human dignity. The dregs of the society. Imagine, you've turned human beings into dregs of the society. On one point, it is amazing that a human being can survive in any condition. It is amazing. That again shows the perfection that God speaks of when he says, I've created man, and you have no idea of the capabilities of man the way I do. What makes him special is his capability, his ability, to live under any condition, and his ability to create something new out of his condition to make conditions better, And yet, in all of that, we keep creating this vicious cycle where we keep putting people out there, where we keep stripping people off of their divine given, God given dignity. We're stripping them of their self-respect, we're stripping them of their dignity, and then we're talking about stench, and we're talking about smell, and we're talking about odors. You serious right now? Again, as human beings, what role have you played? What role have you played to ensure that people around you live with dignity? What role has your government played? What role has your system played? In fact, if anything, as I said, your system literally, deliberately made this happen. And we allowed it. Again, in Muslim countries, you will see less of this because there are certain laws that are part of the constitution and the Islamic legal framework that you cannot fight, although people are looking for roundabout ways to do that. But what little dignity our people manage to maintain is because of those Islamic laws in place. But imagine that despite those Islamic laws, the Western culture is being used here as well, of where people are looking for different ways to strip people of their dignity, which this current government and the army have been doing. And they have been doing it in a very American way, in a very Israeli way, You can see the hand of America, you can see the hand of Israel. Never ever has Pakistan seen people live below poverty line. Ever. This was a country where food, everybody could afford food. For the first time in history, you're having people who are living below poverty line. You're having people that are being stripped of their essential, just basic level self-respect as well. You think about that before you talk about stench. And before you talk about all the things that you think are funny, but you're actually showing the world how small you are when you talk about these stupid things. And this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.